What are we talking about?
The Rise of Skywalker.
That's it. So let us just go back and have Theresa kind of explain, why did we get to this point in the Star Wars universe, one of the most beloved franchises of all time? How did we get here?
It starts with Kathleen Kennedy. It starts...
No. Let's go back to The Force Awakens. Let's take us all
That's
the
where
way
I'm
back.
going back there.
All right. Take us back.
It starts with Kathleen Kennedy, and if you've heard any of the interviews she's done, she has no idea what to do with Star Wars. Her only ideas come from there being source material before. Like she said in the interview that that it's kind of hard to do Star Wars movies, especially after now, because there's no source material to pull from. So she has no imagination for Star Wars. She doesn't understand it.
I just have to take issue with that excuse that there's no source material. There was no source material for the prequel trilogy, but for the sequel trilogy, there was an endless supply of extended universe fiction that had been considered canon up until this point. Some pretty fantastic stories, the Thrawn series, for example, that depicted what happens to the original Star Wars characters after the events of Return of the Jedi, in which Han and Leia get married, in which they have twins, and then those twins grow up to be one a Jedi, one a Sith, and then there's the conflict with that. They have another son named Anakin Solo, which is always very interesting when you have somebody who has a namesake like that. And then you have Luke gets married to a Sith, who then becomes a Jedi.
She became a Jedi when they got married.
Well, right, and then they have a son named Ben Skywalker. So they did. I mean, I know they like to tell us that they made everything up for these movies on their own, but they didn't. They did take some aspects. And so I guess what people really want to hear is what we thought of The Rise of Skywalker.
Do you not want me to go through the facts of how we got here first? It won't take long.
All right, go ahead and go through the facts. I'm kind of bored already.
Kathleen Kennedy has she doesn't know what to do with Star Wars beyond make money and have her agenda. She is a very feminist woman, very modern day feminist woman. That's why she got her little The Force is Female shirts and all that. The original trilogy, the original sequel trilogy, was supposed to be very focused on Princess Leia. It really deifies Princess Leia. Everyone loves Princess Leia in the movies. She never does anything wrong. She's who everyone looks up to. The original trilogy was supposed to really be about her and really glorify her. But, as you know, Carrie Fisher died. And so
that's a problem.
Yeah, they didn't know what to do. And the original script, Rian Johnson had an original script that kind of put down Luke and really bolstered up Leia, and they didn't know what to do when Carrie Fisher died, and so they just said, okay, let's just go ahead with Rian Johnson's first draft. Rian Johnson had so many people in production telling him no with what he wanted to do. Well, Rian Johnson is...
We're talking about
The Last Jedi. We're at The Last Jedi. Rian Johnson is an egomaniac. He wants to be relevant. He wants to be remembered. He wants to cause controversy and division just so people will remember him. He said this. He did all these things with the movie, with Luke's character and all that stuff, and he had people on set telling him that this isn't a good idea, but no one who actually had authority over him, Kathleen Kennedy, told him no. And so, he did the politics she wanted to hear in that, and so she was pleased. So he went forward with that movie, and Star Wars, with all the logic and the character consistencies, was destroyed. The illusion of Star Wars was killed with that movie, because the prequels didn't kill the illusion of Star Wars because they had it had the universe still in place. It had still some good things. This directly went to characters and concepts that people connected with in the first place and blew them apart, because the first movie came out and had no story. The second movie came out and undid that no story, and then so we basically, and then no one liked The Last Jedi, so we're left with The Rise of Skywalker to essentially be its own story and fix everything in this trilogy.
So now we can get to the nitty-gritty. Now we can talk about our feelings. Let's talk about how this movie made us feel. So going into The Rise of Skywalker, obviously we were very disappointed with The Last Jedi because it took a character that was much beloved, Luke Skywalker, and turned him into a grouchy, mean old man that was not the character that we enjoyed in the original trilogy. Exactly. They also, in The Force Awakens, they destroyed Han's character to a certain extent, although that was not in and of itself a franchise killer. What they did with kind of the feel the feel of The Last Jedi, it just made it was kind of a stick it in your eye kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like, here's this thing that you love, I'm going to do the exact opposite of what you enjoyed about that franchise, and just make you dislike this franchise, essentially.
Yeah.
So one positive element, there's very few positive elements about The Rise of Skywalker, so I'm going to only name two, and there probably were only two. But the one positive about The Rise of Skywalker was that it did pay some respect to the fans, and it kept a certain Star Wars
feel.
It had a Star Wars feel to a certain extent. Don't eat off the floor. It had a Star Wars feel, but it wasn't the stick it in your eye kind of a thing. It wasn't the...
It didn't feel like it was insulting you.
Yes, The Last Jedi felt like it was insulting the fans, and The Rise of Skywalker was attempting to make restitution to the fans, even though it failed miserably. At least it was like, we're trying, people, please love us again, please give us your money.
Well,
please.
I really felt that way for the first half. I felt the way through the whole movie. For the first half, I felt like it was three characters. They want them to have chemistry, and they want them to feel like they're all buddies, and they want people to have that feeling they did with Han, Leia, and Luke, like they did in Return of the Jedi. And I understand why some of the people who are defending this movie, I understand why people are drawn to that. But I just watched the movie, and I just think it's too late for this. You haven't built this up at all. I don't really feel anything for these characters because there's no actual substance there. But I was kind of just enjoying it just because of how inconsistent and how laughable it was to see the train wreck for the first half. Let me finish. For the first half, I was enjoying the train wreck. There was a roller coaster where it was like, this thing happens, feel this, they're saying this, and this is going on, and I was just laughing. And then we get to the second half. It's the moment, and there's going to be spoilers in this. It's the moment where Kylo says, "Rey, you're a Palpatine." Cringiest line in all of Star Wars. It was that moment where I felt my heart turn from I'm just laughing at I'm laughing at the clown show to I'm being tortured like Gollum in the Fellowship of the Ring.
That was the first point where in the movie it was so much cringe, it was ludicrous. Because it was campy and it was silly up until that point, but at least the suspension of disbelief hadn't been broken quite yet. But it was almost like those two characters broke the fourth wall at that point because it was so stupid. It was the dumbest line, it was poorly delivered, it was awful. And so that was one of the three, if I can just summarize, there were three parts of the movie that were absolutely grotesquely stupid. Dumb, awful, ridiculous. I can't even tell you how bad. So the first one was, as you said, the reveal where Rey is considered a Palpatine. When it is revealed to her that she is a Palpatine, the way that was delivered and the way that was revealed was the most stupid, anticlimactic thing I've ever seen. And it was the point at which the movie really took a downturn in this just skyrocketing
I still don't feel like it was trying to insult me after that.
No,
I feel like J.J. Abrams thought, Abrams, whatever his name is, I felt like he thought, or whoever behind the scenes thought, well, Palpatine, fans will be excited to have a big villain return. I felt like that was fan service, but this entire movie is misguided fan service because it doesn't understand. No, you're invalidating Return of the Jedi by doing this, and you're bringing this villain back in the most ridiculous way possible.
The problem with this whole thing is they didn't have to bring Palpatine back. She could have been his offspring without you bringing the character back. It could have just been the backstory. Oh yeah, her lineage lines up, and she's now somehow related to Palpatine. She doesn't even have to be the granddaughter, but there was A, no lead up for this whatsoever in the other two movies, and B, you didn't have to bring robot Palpatine dragged along by the back of his neck by this crane thing throughout the movie to try and scare us.
Even though I felt terrible at that point in the movie, I just could not stop laughing at him, like, hanging around on this puppet crane. I couldn't believe they did that. But so much about the Palpatine stuff makes zero sense to me.
Somebody needs to recut that scene with the I got no strings from Age of Ultron.
The whole Palpatine thing seems so silly because all of a sudden they're like, we hear that Palpatine might be back, and no one since the prequels.
That was totally out of left field. No one
from the prequels has ever called him Palpatine. It's always been the Emperor. He always had this kind of.
You mean the originals?
Yeah. No. The prequels
no one
they
from
called
the
him.
Originals.
No one from the originals called him Palpatine. He was the Emperor, and he always had this kind of mysticism. And obviously, they know his history. It just felt so weird that all of a sudden they're like, and the Palpatine's back. Oh, really? Oh, what do we do now? It's like
it was very sloppy. It was very cringy, and it was almost like it wasn't the original plan. And then they just edited that in later. I mean, I know there was a bunch of reshoots. It might have been that, but it was like shoehorn. It was in one of those things where we're trying to shove that square thing into the circle, or the circle thing into the square, or whatever that is. It didn't fit. It didn't fit.
So much of this movie is rushed, and that's how I felt with the beginning. It's
I know,
like,
it felt like we were riding horses.
Like that opening scene where Rey comes back and all of a sudden she has banter with Poe and Finn, and they're just like talking and like having multiple conversations with each other at once, and it's trying to make you think these characters know each other, they like each other, even though Rey hasn't interacted with Poe hardly at all, and you can't feel anything. And then Kylo shows up and he trips up Rey, and then they go to a planet where they're having like a Sakaar party, and then they find this ship which for some reason has full gas and everything, and they fly off of it, and then Chewbacca dies, and then he's not dead, and then Rey,
Lando's there,
and then Lando shows up, and then Rey forces
Lando's
lightning.
there, and somehow they know who he is, even though he's put on 2,000 pounds.
Yeah, they didn't know who Han Solo was or Luke, but they knew who Lando Calrissian was.
Right.
And I want to talk about, before we go on to the other cringy stuff, I want to talk about Kylo Ren's plot armor. Because and I was just screaming about this in the theater. Okay, so he charges Rey in his car or whatever, or his bike or whatever he's got.
Yeah.
He charges her, she hits him, his thing crashes, it completely explodes into an inferno, and then a few seconds later he's walking out with his little lightsaber like nothing happened. And then later in the movie, he is shot back by Palpatine. He flies down a bottomless pit with lightning all around and sharp rocks, and then he just climbs out of it later as if nothing happened.
It is great. His plot armor is actually better than Rey's.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got, because Rey, at least, she honest to goodness dies at the end, and then doesn't, because everything is awful. Let's move on though to the second cringiest moment of all time, which, fast forwarding to the end, most of the cringe really is at the end, and that's what destroys the movie. So, because we haven't seen the scene recently in an Endgame movie previously, it was not fresh on our minds whatsoever. It was completely new. The Emperor somehow encapsulates all of the Sith inside his robot reincarnated body, and he has this line at the end when he and Rey are having their final confrontation, and he says, "I am the Sith." And then Rey responds, and all of the Jedi voices are they're whispering encouragement into her head, and they're singing songs of praise, and it's wonderful, and they're getting into it, and she says, "I am all the Jedi." And then we wake up and we realize we've been watching Endgame the entire movie.
That, before we go on to the third worst thing, which I know it's what it's going to be.
Wait, let's dwell on this for a minute.
I know, I
Let's
have
dwell
something to
on
say
this.
about it. This is so bad, I think they knew it was bad. I think they were just hoping the dumb mainstream audiences, since they loved Endgame, that they would love it here too.
We literally just saw this movie in April. It hasn't even been a year. And it was a very iconic moment. It was great in that movie. It's not great here, and it actually, I think, to a certain extent, it kind of damages, because it is a little bit, if it's delivered in the wrong way, it's kind of stupid, and it's kind of cringy.
Yeah, and it's
and
funny.
it was good in those movies because of the full context and the build-up and everything, but then when you just shove it right in this Star Wars movie, it's bad. Very bad. Okay.
So let's talk about the last cringy thing, which I think I know what it is.
The last cringy thing is the thing that I hate the most in movies, and so I hate it generally, and then when it's done badly, I hate it even more.
And it's been happening a lot lately.
It's been happening a lot lately. Random makeout scenes. So, let's describe what happens at the end of the movie. Rey defeats Palpatine. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And she lays down and dies for no reason afterwards.
Which I think is funny, because Rey has so much plot armor, and then she dies.
And then she just, like, collapses and dies.
And then
It was very strange. So she's dead, laying on the ground, and Kylo climbs out of the pit of despair that he was thrown into for no reason. And he
completely
crawls out.
unscarred again. I don't know how he could possibly survive.
Well, I think he had a little blood coming from his lip because
his lip hit a rock on the way down, and he found one of those bouncy springs from Sonic on the bottom, and he came back up. Is what happened.
So he comes crawling out of this pit, and all of the audience members at this point are standing on the edge of the pit, pushing him back in.
Yeah.
But no, he comes crawling out of this pit, crawls over to Rey, picks her up, realizes that she's dead, and then somehow injects the Force into her, his life force into her body.
And trades his life.
For hers. Not before they have a quick makeout scene, which is just the most painful moment
I
of
have
the
so
entire
much
movie.
to say about this.
So forced, so undeveloped. I don't even know.
I have something to say. I feel like, okay, so this is something they do in the movie, where they all of a sudden decide that the Force has a new power where you can either trade lives, give someone some of your energy or whatever. I'm giving somebody that to you right now. And either, heal them or trade lives with them. I think that in a different context, that'd be interesting to explore, since that was what Anakin was seeking in the prequels. It would be interesting to explore what you have to do to get that and what's the cost of it. What did it cost? But to have Rey and Kylo just be able to do this all of a sudden after Anakin could not do that. Mace Windu couldn't do that.
It's literally the thing that Anakin killed his wife over, trying to figure out how to do this.
I think it's funny if you give the whole time. He killed his wife over trying to figure out a way to save her.
It's great. It's perfect. But this is literally the thing that Anakin went to the dark side for, to try to figure out how to save people's lives.
And then Rey and Kylo just can do it all of a sudden.
And then all of a sudden, Rey is able to do it at the beginning of the movie. The only thing I appreciated about that scene was at least it set up that the whole Force transfer thing was possible. But that is something that should have been set up in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And should have been steadily built up throughout these three movies as this new thing. And that then we find out is actually a Sith power.
Yeah.
And then that's why it disturbed Luke so much to find Rey. But, who needs continuity?
And then Kylo, he uses his Sith power as a trade. Here's what I think of the Kylo-Rey relationship. I think it's interesting that you might have two dyad, as they refer to
Yes, and I thought that whole thing was the only thing that was compelling in the movie. But it was, again, a thing that should have been touched on slightly in the Force Awakens. It should have been touched on, and then it should have been brought back as this disturbing thing that Luke discovers about Rey in the second one, and then it should have come through towards the end and come to fruition in the third one. But it was like we shoved three movies into one.
Yeah,
because
that's exactly
it was
what
like it was a makeup for the mistakes in The Force Awakens and for the disaster in The Last Jedi that completely went off track. And then it was trying to recover from two bad movies in one. So you had some things that were actually kind of interesting. The whole dyad and the Force thing was actually interesting. And they could have done that if they'd had Jaina and Jason Solo in the movie. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted to do our own new thing that wasn't new. And we wanted to not build it up. And we wanted to, stick it to the fans in one movie and then beg for mercy in the next movie.
I'm
very frustrated.
Here is the thing. I think if you were going to do something between Kylo and Rey, a smart director or a smart writer would have maybe seen...
Wait a minute. Repeat what you just said. Smart director? Disney doesn't own those anymore.
The Russos are pretty smart.
The Star Wars people at Disney don't have anybody smart or anybody who has any modicum of intellect.
Okay, a smart person would have, say we do The Force Awakens and we see Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver acting, we see that they have chemistry, and then maybe you think, there might be something here.
They did have a little bit of chemistry in The Last Jedi.
Let's say
but
you
it was
see
like,
that.
it was that whole dyad thing chemistry, not this whole, oh, I'm going to make out with her at the end of the movie right before
I'll
I die
get to that.
chemistry.
Listen, someone will see that, and they might start working up a story that way and building it up slowly, even doing maybe a romantic connection. Hear me out. The problem with Kylo and Rey is they instead start out as a fan fiction pairing, and it's like Rian Johnson saw the fan fiction and decided to go there. So all Kylo and Rey have is fan service. You know, well, it doesn't make sense for them to make out here. No, but some people will like to see it.
One person on Tumblr will enjoy this, so we're going to shove it into the movie and down your throat.
Rey, I'm for the other team.
Okay, so those were the three.
Adam Driver is wasted, by the way. He's a great actor, and they wasted him.
I think he's a good actor. If I hadn't seen the clip of him in The Marriage Story, I would say he's a bad actor. I think he's a good actor. I think he's a really ugly-looking guy.
Yeah.
And so it was very hard to sell that one.
Yeah, when you've got this connection between him and Rey, well, the whole movie was like, take my hand.
I know.
Marriage. And it's when then you got this guy with like a potato face.
Like this.
A guy with like a potato face. Rey, there's a connection between us. And he's like sticking he has this weird voice that sounds like he's on the phone with a cold. And that he's just kind of calling you to go on a date, but he doesn't know. He's the guy who throws rocks at a girl because he can't get her to go out with him.
Yeah. I mean, Thor lightsabers.
I think Daisy Ridley is a terrible
actress.
actress.
So I want to wrap this up because there's just so we could go on and talking about this forever. But so those were the three cringiest moments. But the thing that really ruined the movie for me was the ending, the very end, where Rey basically uses identity theft and takes over the Skywalker legacy.
And people are now making fun of it, saying, okay, now she and Kylo have an incestuous relationship.
Yeah,
she's a Skywalker.
I mean, so did Luke and Leia. So this is not unprecedented in Star Wars, but she didn't earn that name. She did not earn the right to take that name. She didn't earn it based on her actions as a character in the movie, and she didn't earn it based on the writing and the development of the characters throughout the series. So on the two fronts, within the story and without the story, she did not earn the right to take on the name of Skywalker. And so it's offensive to me to have her say, I am Rey Skywalker at the end of the movie. And that's really what just... I know this entire movie was basically an apology to the fans, but her having had so little development and so little reason for me to care about her, and so little reason for her to have any connection with the original characters, to then take on the most famous name in Star Wars history is almost Last Jedi level offensive to me as a fan.
Even though they weren't intending that. Won't you guys like this?
Yeah. No. I know that they were intending to be like, we love you guys, we want to do this, we want to make you love her, which is why we're just shoving this undeserved title. It's like giving her a title. It's like giving her a college degree and she didn't go to college. It's one of those stupid honorary college degrees. She doesn't have the student loan debt, and she doesn't have the actual study behind the degree to warrant her having the degree. And so, I mean, it's like the level up from Jedi Master they just gave her. And
this is outrageous. It's unfair. How can you call yourself a Skywalker and not even have a character? Take a seat.
So that's my story, and that's my problem with this entire movie. Even though it was intended as an apology to the fans, it was also very offensive to me as a fan, as a longtime Star Wars fan, and you have no idea what the 12-year-old Kelly thought about Star Wars.
I see some people saying, it didn't make me angry. It wasn't that bad. I think it's just because they're reacting to the apology part of it.
Yeah.
I think that I kind of watched it with my Mahler glasses. I think that every second of this movie has a flaw in it, and that the positives are just positive things that could have been done good if they had been in an actual developed story.
One thing that I just want, and it's very hard for people to do this, but there's a lot of people and a lot of my friends that I've seen that have watched the movie and have said that they enjoyed it or that they liked it or that they thought it was a great Star Wars movie or whatever, and I feel like there's just a lot of people, and I have been one of them at certain points with certain movies, that people just say they enjoyed the movie just because of how it made them feel. Now, that's okay on a subjective level. The movie could have made you feel good, but the movie could still be a bad movie, even if it made you feel good. The Princess Bride is a bad movie, but it makes everyone feel good and feel happy, and so that's why people enjoy it. That doesn't mean it's a good movie. That doesn't mean, and it's the same with The Rise of Skywalker. You can enjoy it if it made you feel good, but you cannot come to me and say that it was a good movie, because it was haphazardly put together. It was a jumble of thoughts and ideas that didn't make any sense together, that had no build-up and no credible plot development and no character development over three movies. It's just very frustrating to me. So please, if you enjoyed the movie, this is what my request is to the few people that watch my show. If you enjoyed the movie, fine. On a subjective level, you can enjoy it. But don't come to me in the comments and say, it was a good movie because it made me feel good, and that's why you are worthless, and I am unsubscribing from your channel. That's just who I feel. That's my impression of this. This is literally how I read the negative comments, both on Twitter and on Facebook. And all of it. This is the way you guys sound to me. So, enjoy the movie if it was something you enjoyed.
But don't share your opinion about it.
Exactly.
Don't speak. You are worthless. No. If you're on the fence about seeing this movie, don't go see it.
I mean, you can, but go see it knowing that it is the end of Star Wars, and it really, at the end of the day, it's not going to make you feel good long term. I'm just going to wrap it by saying, we are filming this on Christmas Day. We are all very tired. We have no makeup on, and we've eaten a lot of things we shouldn't have eaten.
And we watched The Rise of Skywalker, which made a couple screws loose.
Yes, we are still trying to screw those things back together. I got a hex key for Christmas. We've been working on this. Okay.
We better say goodbye.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe.
And don't leave a comment if you like The Rise of Skywalker.
Don't. All right. I'll see you guys on the next episode.